When I talk to people and tell them that I still live with my mother and I'm 21 years old, they sound quite surprised. They ask me, "You're 21 years old, you're an adult, why are you still living with your parents?" Well, I've certainly got my own reasons for doing it, and there are plenty of other people, much older than me, who still do live with their parents. Now, a lot of people see this as a social stigma, where you're not considered an adult if you are still living with your parents. And I find that quite odd, but at the same time, it's slightly understandable. But then that was back in the old times where you are more required to, once you reach 18, just to move out of your house and become independent. Now, that's changed, and I think that's a good thing, that you shouldn't always be required to, once you reach 18 and finish high school, to straight move out of your parents' lives and start your own. And again, you're 18 years old. Your brain isn't fully developed to make good decisions, or at least decisions that you think are good for you without properly going over them in time. Now, being 21 years old and living with my mother for the past 3 years, I have had a few pros and cons of still living with my parents. And I just wanted to go over a few of them, and just to help people make a decision if they want to still stay with their parents or just to leave. Everybody's different. Some people are free spirits who just want to go out and do their own thing. And then people like myself who are a bit more, recluse, where we just want to stay in familiar places. And it's difficult for us to make the decision to move out. Now, I just want to go over a few of them and we'll see where that goes from there. So the first one is just financial stability. So when you're staying with your parents, they are actually going to probably have you pay less rent than you would if you were to actually move to a different place and get an apartment. Now, a friend of mine, he pays roughly $280 a week for rent. Me, on the other hand, I only pay $150. Now, of course, I have to do things around the house, and that kind of slightly reduces my rent. But again, this is different. Not every parent is going to say you only have to pay X amount of money, which is actually lower than what you would have to pay if you went to an actual apartment. Another friend of mine, he lives with his parents, and he has to pay $320, which is way more than me and more than my friend who actually stays in a house with a bunch of other roommates. Now, again, this varies on your parents, but a majority of the time it is actually cheaper to stay with your parents than it is to get an apartment. Another upside of living with your parents is just emotional support. Because, again, if you're living far away from your parents or your family members, say you're in a different country, you'll always have them with you because they're only just a phone call away. But it's the presence of them, having them with you, beside you, at the point in time where you're feeling down. And that's just something that is valuable to a lot of people. Having somebody, a family member there, a parent, a sibling, who can support you when you're going through a tough time and you don't have to talk to them through the phone, and you can actually gauge their emotional response to you, it is something very lovely and something that shouldn't be frowned upon. Now, another good thing about living with your parents is there's not a lot of pressure, because once you finish high school, if you were alone and had to get your own apartment, you are kind of rushed into the role of having to get a job and a stable income to then pay for yourself and your rent. Now, having to pay for rent and food is quite a bit of money. So being at home, having your rent reduced, probably, and not having to worry about having to get a stable income and support yourself alone is actually quite good. Now, this doesn't mean you can procrastinate on just staying at home, watching Netflix all day and eating junk food. But it does give you time to chill and just to manage yourself and to prepare yourself for when you do actually have to get off your ass and get a job. And the last pro here being just shared responsibilities. Because living with your parents, you are going to still have to do things, but not all by yourself and all at one time. So living with your parents and having shared responsibilities like mowing the lawns, vacuuming the house, cleaning the house, doing the dishes, making dinner, those things, while you still have to do them by yourself, having them shared between members of your family it takes a big load off your shoulders, and it means you don't have to worry about so many things so much. Okay, so now cons. Limited independence. So being here with my mother, I'm not as independent as I would be if I were alone. Now, being alone, it forces you to mature a lot quicker than usual. like I said before, when you're alone and you have to kind of force yourself into the role of getting a job, getting a stable income, paying for yourself and everything like that, it forces you to mature a lot quicker, but at the same time, it forces you to mature. Because obviously your brain doesn't fully develop until 25, but that doesn't mean that you can't make more mature and reasonable decisions while you're still young. And being forced into going out and doing it all by yourself does help you with that. And being stuck at home, it kind of it kind of allows you to not be as independent as you would be if you were alone. Another downside is just reduced privacy, because when you're alone, that's the thing, you're alone. You don't have to worry about anybody walking in on you or disturbing you while you're doing something. The amount of times people have walked into my room while I'm doing something without knocking is just horrendously annoying, and something I have to deal with a lot. And that's just because I live with other people. And obviously, yes, you might have to deal with this if you were flatting with other people, like one of my friends does. But if you just had a place alone to yourself, that solitude, that not so much loneliness, but that place where you could be alone by yourself without anybody else bothering you is actually quite nice. Now, one that I brought up before is kind of like the social perception of the fact that living with your parents is something that you shouldn't do. Like as soon as you reach 18, you should just be alone and be independent and go into your adulthood with a smile on your face. Now, I do slightly agree with this, where you do need to have a form of responsibility, but at the same time, it's just a social stigma, like I said before, about living with your parents. Now, if you're somebody that doesn't want to be judged by anybody or any of your friends that might judge you for living with your parents, then yes, move out, be on your own. But a lot of the time, it is a very big social stigma that people have with people that still live with their parents who are in their early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s, late 30s, mid 40s. People still do that. And I don't think it's something that should be really judged a lot, but it is something that you should be aware of if you are living with your parents, that you might possibly be stigma for it. And that's something it is kind of a con, but it is something you should be aware of. And that's about it. A lot more pros than cons, but again, that's just my perception on living here for 3 years, and I've had way more pros than cons with living with my mother. But again, this is just dependent on who you are as a person. Somebody like me who enjoys familiarity with just my house and my family, or somebody like my sister who is very much a free spirit. Somebody who just very much likes familiarity but prefers to see new things and experience new things. Now, again, there's nothing inherently right or wrong about these two perspectives and these two different ways that you feel as a person. So just here are the pros, here are the cons. Make of them what you will. And whatever you decide, don't be ashamed to still live with your parents, but also don't be pushed into staying with them or leaving. It's your choice, your life to live, and deal with it as you see fit. So yeah, that's about it. So if you enjoyed this or took something out of it, I hope you did, and I'll see you in the next one.